time I see him, he didn't even shake my hand. I was like, who knows this guy? I saw him on the fly, I forgot his name. What was it, Mike? Mike Keating. So, we're gonna keep the show going. Your next comedian for tonight is a real good friend of mine, Mike Keating.
Oh, thanks so much, everybody, for coming and supporting great comedy in a fine local establishment. I'm really impressed with this turnout, you know. Old friends, fellow athletes, you know, my wife, Beth, and she doesn't come very often, you know, to these shows, but I'm really glad that I met her all those years ago because I'm a better person now because of it. I mean, about 5 years before we met, you know, I was celebrating my 21st birthday at Liam's in Framingham. Rick, you remember where that is? Yeah. So, you know, I'm sitting next to a girl at a bar, chatting her up, and a few hours later, she says, why don't you drive me home? I'll make this birthday extra special. So I said, okay. So we get a couple blocks, cop pulls me over and says, sir, have you been drinking? So I just looked up at him and I said, is she that ugly? So, by the way, how many of you have ever used COVID to get out of something you didn't really want to do? Like, when a person you can't stand comes barreling toward you wanting a hug, hey, bring it in, come on, and you're like, social distancing, please keep back 12 feet. What do you mean 12 feet? This, you know, the CDC says it's 6 will protect you from COVID. Well, yeah, but assholes are twice as contagious. So anyway, Beth and I went apple picking with our son and his family earlier today. Now, we always love catching up with him whenever we get the chance. I mean, we're really pleased with how he's turned out. Happily married, you know, 2 kids, nice house, great career. Now, there is a small downside to that last part. His employer has such a stellar reputation that pretty much everybody he knows has hit him up for a job. And at this point, I mean, he's pretty fed up. I mean, you should have heard him having a complete meltdown just a couple weeks ago. Dad, I'm not gonna hire you, leave me alone. All right, how many of you work for somebody young enough to be your son or daughter? I mean, that first happened to me like 12 years ago. And back then, my boss was a real jerk. I mean, he's like half my age and he's playing the experience card on me. Well, you know, Mike, this isn't my first rodeo. No shit, you've been riding my ass nonstop. Anyway, these days I'm retired, but I work part-time occasionally. I was recently a lifeguard at a health club in Worcester, and I would open their swimming pool weekday mornings at 5:30. Now at that hour, you're dealing with type A personalities on steroids. Yeah, once I was late and immediately I get this irate member giving me a hard time. Oh, you think those 5 minutes don't matter? Think again. I work in Boston. Do you have any idea how much commuter traffic can change in that short amount of time, especially on the Mass Pike? Why can't people like you better understand what people like us have to go through? I'm like, well, maybe because you didn't hire me when I sent you my resume. Yeah, I totally shouldn't have said that. He gave me the meanest look, and he started coming toward me in a very aggressive manner. He's like, Dad, don't start that shit again. Corporate America and I have never gotten along. I mean, this goes all the way back to college, when a company made me take a polygraph. Yeah, they were legal back then. And it was so humiliating, because first, you know, they made me fill out this really long questionnaire covering things like drug usage, job history. And then after that, they started asking me all those they hooked me up to the machine and they started asking me all those accusing questions like, are you being truthful with us about your drug usage? Are you telling us everything about your job history? Are you out of your fucking mind applying here? So somebody tell me how that's fair. I mean, can I hook them up to the machine? I mean, is the salary you're offering all you can afford? Am I really gonna get that promotion in 6 months? Is your boss a total douche like you? Now, to be fair, I can't blame them for asking me about drugs. I mean, back in college, I was drunk or high pretty much the entire time. Now, back then, we used to call alcohol liquid courage. Bullshit. Liquid stupidity would be more like it. I mean, it's bad enough when you're dealing with your friends. Yo, Mike, you're swerving all over the place. Maybe you should pull over and let me drive. And I'm like, yeah, fuck you. This is my car. Nobody's gonna tell me whether I'm fit to drive. And now, it gets really dicey when you're dealing with strangers. I mean, once I went to a nightclub and I got in a big argument with another customer. I mean, first we're shouting, then we're shoving, finally we're trading punches. I mean, by the time I realized what I got myself into, I already had a broken nose, a bloody lip, and 2 loose teeth. Then her boyfriend showed up and things got worse. So, after I got tired of hangovers and fights, I switched to pot. And I can remember one time getting deeply philosophical about the original Star Trek series. What if Dr. McCoy had grown up on Vulcan instead of Spock? What if Spock had joined the Romulans instead of the Federation? Like, yo, Mike, snap out of it. You're swerving all over the place. Maybe you should pull over and let me drive. And I'm like, what? I thought you were driving. Anyway, these days, I'm really conflicted on pot because I don't want anybody going to jail over it, but I also don't want, to encourage its abuse. I mean, last Halloween, I had a trick-or-treater show up at my door dressed as a pot plant. All right, call me old-fashioned, but I am not giving candy to any kid wearing that costume. I did what I thought was right. I gave him a giant bag of Doritos. Hey, so can you believe that Massachusetts legalized gay marriage like 18 years ago? I mean, where's the time go? I mean, do you guys remember how controversial it was and some of the stupid comments like, what will they fight for next? The right to marry their dogs? I wish the dumbasses who say that shit would do me a really big favor. Could they please explain to my dog that we're not married? I mean, you should have seen the look she gave me and Beth when we left the house. Oh, you think a comedy show is more important than playing with me or taking me for a walk? I don't think you love me anymore. I mean, talk about laying on the guilt. I mean, that's got nothing. All right, so I got a couple of running friends there. Either of you planning to run Boston in April? Me neither. I've actually run it 7 times, but I don't need to go back. I mean, the big problem with that race is that so many people want to do it that every year they're forced to turn away quality athletes, which causes a lot of resentment toward charity runners. Now, of course, I was a charity runner, but I still get the resentment. I mean, some of these organizations have no regard for fitness level, never mind speed. I mean, it's all about the money. Now, I saw one guy who I swear had to be over 90 years old, and he was slumped way over, and he's slowly dragging himself along, taking little tiny baby steps. I mean, I hope he raised some serious cash, because I gotta tell you, that was tough to watch. Stupid asshole beat me by 30 minutes. I mean, the last time I did it was no fun. I had a guy running in front of me. His shorts were much too big for him, so they were hanging halfway down his butt, and it was pretty gross. Come to find out, when he crossed the finish line, the drug squad arrested him. Well, I mean, he had 30 pounds of crack in plain sight. And then, when I was in either Wellesley or Newton, my race bib fell off, so I had to stop to reattach it. Now, I hate safety pins. I mean, look at me. I'm in my 60s. I got middle-aged vision. Do you have any idea what a hassle it is to fumble around with little tiny objects when they're up close and they're all blurry? By the way, how many of you wear reading glasses for sex? Beth, put your hand down. Anyway, these days I do triathlons. Swim, bike, run. My first race was like 10 years ago, and it was a complete disaster. Because like most newcomers, I couldn't swim worth shit. And when I got out of the water, I was all stressed and I'm screaming at one of the volunteers. I hate my wetsuit. I'm always struggling to put it on and take it off. What is wrong with this piece of crap? the volunteer just says, sir, you're wearing it inside out. Yeah, the bike ride didn't go any better. I finished way in the back of the pack. I mean, it was so embarrassing because I didn't pass one guy on that entire ride. Now, I managed to pass a couple women. Of course, I beat them because they stopped at a yard sale. Yeah, a couple months ago, I was doing a fundraiser in Wellesley, and that last joke didn't work at all because the audience got so confused. They're like, what the hell is a yard sale? I actually took a triathlon training class once. You know, we're waiting beside the pool and out comes the instructor and she says, okay, we got 4 lanes. So how about we have the fast swimmers in lane 1, you know, the average swimmers in lane 2 and the slower ones in lane 3. Mike, you can have the 4th lane. By the way, your wetsuit's inside out. You know, one thing I did ask her though, I said, is it my imagination or do people swim a lot better and faster in a pool? And she said, no, you're on point because look, in a pool you got all kinds of cues, like lane lines on either side of you, black lines on the bottom. You know, out in the lake, you know, there's none of that. You know, so people swim all over the place and it takes them forever to get where they're going. So one triathlon where I volunteered, I was watching the swim. And I couldn't believe how accurate that was. I mean, the guys were swimming in every possible direction. And the women kept stopping to ask for directions. So, you know, I get, these days my friends are all nagging me to put an Ironman on my bucket list. Now, an Ironman is where you swim 2.5 miles, bike over 100, then run a marathon all in the same day. Yeah, that's on my rhymes with bucket list. Well, I actually did volunteer at an Ironman up in Canada last month, and I was working near the finish line because it's a super spectacular place to be. Because you can hear the MC welcoming each and every athlete as they approach. John Doe, you are an Ironman. Mary Smith, you are an Ironman. Mike Keating, you're that dumb fuck who's always wearing his wetsuit inside. And you are a wonderful audience, which is why it's so great to do this. So continue to support your local businesses and great comedy. Thanks so much.
Keep it going for, what's his name again? Oh, yeah, Mike Keating. You guys having a good time?